Today, we look back on the last 8 episodes and what got us here, and look towards where we want to be individually. In our daily life, we have several hats that we put on, different roles that we play, usually separately or sometimes 2 or 3 in any given time.
We acknowledge that it is not a straightforward journey, and just like how you would balance on a log, you sometimes fall and go back on it again with determination. Oh, we also argue about happiness. Welcome to the Imperfect Clinician. What's in it for me? The Imperfect Clinician today is going to talk about what can we get out of all of this deliberation we've been doing for many, many episodes now. So what is the plan? Where do I want to be?
I think it'll be helpful for us to summarize what was discussed so far. So we talked about unpacking our baggages, explored vulnerability, shame, guilt, accessing our authentic self by practicing self-compassion, reflecting on our current state, whether we're coping or thriving, between others and within self to discover purpose.
Okay, so we've got a little bit of a journey, a little bit of a plan for ourselves. And first of all, we focus on ourselves. Then we look a bit even deeper into ourselves and we try to establish what makes us happy. So, how do we make ourselves happy through self-compassion in a way? And then opening up to others through seeing how do we cope, how do we thrive amongst others and in ourselves as well to find the purpose. Yeah, so on reflection on where we are now, where did all this journey take us?
I think I agree with most of the things that you said earlier on. I would prefer not to use the word happy because I think for me, happiness is not the main purpose. For me, feeling calm is what I am more working towards. So rather than all the hustle and bustle in my head, to be able to achieve calmness in my head and in how I'm managing my day to day is something that I would strive against. Happiness just feel quite, superficial to me.
It's like a slogan. It's sort of common ground that everybody understands. What do we want in our lives? We want to be happy. But I agree that happiness can be defined by, through example, like you said before, being of service to others.
And what I also wanted to say was I think when you do that work and the whole process and the journey that we've talked about, it will be difficult, it will be messy. I think it's important to acknowledge that uncomfortable, awkward, difficult, painful feelings, emotions, journey, being able to name them, being able to be mindful of how it affects you, how it affects your defense mechanism, for you to be able to achieve calmness. I think I just want to be a bit more mindful on how we use the language of emotions.
Absolutely. What I would like to ask you is, I'm going to flip it on its head, because we agree that working on ourselves is something that we owe to ourselves to put ourselves in a better position than before. We want to get better in whatever we're doing, better as people, better as clinicians. So I'm going to flip it on its head and ask, why doing all of the above, all this unpacking baggage, exploring vulnerability, focusing on shame and discovering purpose, can be bad for us? Is it bad for us? Because in the short run, in my opinion, it may not necessarily be that pretty. Why do you think it could be bad for us?
I think rather than bad, I would say it will be uncomfortable because it's allowing us to reflect on our current relationship, whether it's relationship you've had all your life, relationship that is not as easy to cut off. It allows you to assess what relationship that you've got ongoing at the moment, which are unhealthy or draining, and most importantly, what needs work.
Okay, so essentially, in the short run, we feel that it could affect relationships with parents, with relatives, your siblings, partners, wives, husbands,
And friends.
and friends. That can make you into a different person, and you can realize that the world around you is not where you left it. Essentially, you should be more mindful. I think that's the whole purpose of it, to be more mindful and tuned in, and that not necessarily means that the people you were surrounded by will continue on the journey. Or maybe I hope, I truly hope that something like this, the feeling of change, can be more infectious and will prompt other people to develop themselves.
But this is if the other person or the people are ready to accept the changed you.
Absolutely, but this is the thing. I hope that by changing ourselves and realizing, being more mindful, presenting more empathy, and all the feelings that we discussed, we're going to be an inspiration to others, people who can see as an example. I don't want to, big myself up in any way, but I just thought that through showing different attitude, different recognition of the world and people around you can be inspiring for others.
I agree. And also, there might be people who will reject a newer, more improved version of you because you are able to be more present.
And I think that's because they are also not ready, not at the
Yes.
same. Yeah, what you said.
And your change most likely or sometimes might trigger their own fears that they're not ready to address. And so sometimes when you start a journey like this, I think for me, I've noticed that I could clearly see people who respected and support this change in me and people who don't see the same way, or people who might be judgmental or critical even without fully understand the reasoning behind the why.
When do you feel that you need to start changing? What triggers, what inspirations you might come across to make a move, to decide that I can't carry on like this, or my life is not, fulfilled. There's no future.
I think there will be a lot of different ways of going about it. Some people will find change, big changes, moving houses, moving jobs, changing something that is big in their life that might trigger
Yeah, because
a reflection.
change can put you in a position of vulnerability, and that may require a different skill set to overcome and to progress in a way.
And for some people, it's having a close shave or having a reminder of the mortality of being a human.
Yeah.
So seeing somebody around them,
Inevitability of life. Yeah.
passing away or having health issues or being very close to not surviving because of any health conditions, COVID, for example, with the recent pandemic. There will be some where, because a person has got to the point of burnout where they go, if I continue this way, I'm way beyond the level of coping. I am overwhelmed and I'm not able to cope anymore.
So that's good when you can recognize your own triggers. I think that it's we as a social animals living amongst others are even more influential in affecting other people and showing the way to that there is hope in change and there is change in hope.
Yes, I agree. So I think the change came for me, it came about when I was able to identify or able to draw some healthy boundaries around me. Because essentially, I'm giving myself some space to feel, to think, to feel. And once I'm able to do that and everything that we talked about in our previous episodes, I was able to understand my actions, my reactions better. And when I'm able to be very mindful of what I think, how I feel, and how I act, I can then affect the people around me because I'm having the practice of being mindful to myself. Hence, I'm able to work with people around me. It doesn't have to be work where you sit down and talk for an hour. It can be sometimes just one question where you start to change another person's perspective or get them to think outside the box a little bit and think, actually, why? Because everything that we're doing now, we can't do it for anybody else but ourselves.
True.
And how we affect and inspire other people around us is, first of all, by modeling by example. And the second thing is to be almost like a beacon of light of such. So when you start to show empathy, show care to people around you, and build a level of trust and have psychological safety at work or anywhere socially or in family setting, then people are able to open up more. And so when you're able to just ask one or two questions that make them think, I wonder why. And this is just a start. So what I am hoping to do, or what I can see based on feedback that has happened, is when I'm able to do that, it empowers people around me to make changes without even me asking for it. So I'm not asking person A to do something.
No, you don't want to put yourself in a position of power over somebody's feelings. You just show the light and allow people in a way.
Yes, exactly.
So after doing the whole process, I mean, it is an ongoing thing. It's not like there is a beginning and the end. We change because it's a cycle in a way. So after being self-compassionate and answering a third question, how did you find your fulfillment, or let's call it happiness?
After doing all of that work, and it's still ongoing work, it's as if I've woken up. So it's as if I've looked at things from a completely different lens. It's as if my glasses has been very dusty and now it's cleaned.
Usually when people say, oh, I'm awake,
yes,
then they change everything in their life and but you haven't dumped me.
So I think it hasn't been easy because I started on this journey myself and I felt that was when it was the most vulnerable part of our relationship because you weren't ready then. And I found it really hard. You know, when we talk about sometimes the growth can be opposite direction.
True, yeah.
And that's when I was most concerned about our interaction, our relationship. But when we got to the point, and I'm really grateful for that we were able to grow together. It's not easy from both parts, I want to say. Probably not easy for you either.
Yeah, well, It's a process, it's a change, and it's always scary because you never know which direction it's going to head to. We are, different people, different entities, and we may change our priorities, our purpose, our attitude towards things quite frequently. And I think as long as the rate is similar, we can make progress together.
So I would say
vaguely the direction.
Yeah, so I would
similar.
say not necessarily the same rate, but the same direction. Then our resilience has improved in terms of the resilience of our relationship, our interaction, our communication, and also our role as parents. What did it feel like for you?
Well, for me, the alleged happiness, fulfillment, or the ultimate goal or purpose is constant learning. I mean, it is very inquisitive journey when it comes to recognizing yourself, your feelings, and I think because we constantly change, we constantly have to learn about ourselves. But the journey as such, or being conscious of it, being mindful of it, it provides for me like a platform to start recognizing the direction of the journey and what makes you tick, what is going to provide you the ultimate saying, yeah, I think I like it. I feel comfortable where I am. I don't need to chase, too many things to become person at peace with myself.
I can see you trying to avoid using the word happiness after what I've said earlier on.
Well,
because I think for me, consciousness feels more apt in terms of that when you say woken up or that I'm woke, just like what is modern at the moment. So I want to understand what does happiness means to you in your context of using this word?
Well, I understand happiness as mindfulness. It just like, it feels to me you start to become a director of your own conscious happiness, conscious fulfillment, conscious purpose. And you start to, rather than being just there on a passenger seat, you start to be in charge of shaping it. And I think this allows you to control it and make most of it. That's my understanding of, the ultimate happiness. Yeah.
So is it right in saying that you're not relying on anyone except yourself because only you are responsible for your own happiness?
Look, people may find happiness, or what they refer to as happiness. As I say, for me, it's like a key word. It may have so many meanings, and it means different things for different people. And I think everybody should expand it in their own capacity. And I think that for some people, happiness can be given by, I don't know, something a bit more materialistic. For other people, happiness is not being hungry. There are different situations people are in the world.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, it has to affect them and it has to affect me. I cannot expect others to make me happy because I'm going to be bitterly disappointed. I mean, I have a best example of my dad, who had good intentions of making the world a better place, mainly for himself, but through others making him happy. And that is not a healthy relationship. You can't find happiness through others, because then you're constantly going to raise the bar. That's not going to be fulfilled. You're not going to be satisfied. And only being at peace with yourself can bring you the level where you can say, I am quite fulfilled. I am doing some good for others and for myself, and my level stays, my head stays level,
So reflecting on that, then I think myself included, and probably a lot of people who are listening to this can identify with some part of it, where sometimes we go, I feel great because everything today turned out smoothly, or I feel bad because somebody said this. I think in some ways, for me anyway, it then allowed me to reflect on my own resilience to get back to that even and calm state where I always aspire to be, because you always have good moments and bad moments, and it always fluctuates.
And people around shape it. No, absolutely.
Yeah. And people around shape it. That's right. And how we react and how much we allow everything that's happening around us to then dictate our emotions for the rest of the day, that is within our control. And so when you are not able to do that, and I sometimes really struggle, especially when I don't do my self-care routine properly, then I realize actually I am allowing let's say somebody criticizing me for my capabilities to completely define me as a person and define my day. And so what does that show? For me, it shows that I'm not able to reduce the stickiness of the situation. So I take stickiness as how much something bad is sticking onto me and affecting me. And if I don't have the resilience, then it sticks onto me for way too long, and I need to learn to remove it.
That's the thing. It's the resilience that allows you to be independent from others. For me, trying to be happy using others in a way, so relying on others, on your children to make you happy, on your neighbors to be, I don't know, expecting them to be kind to you. It's adding extra, or your parents, it's adding extra variable, and the variable that you can't really control. So you're conditioning your happiness by others, and that is ultimately going to be unsuccessful.
And also, I think when you're doing that, you start to then blame and shame other people around you, because it's never your fault. It's because it's somebody else's.
You rely on others
Yes.
to provide you the alleged happiness. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love this quote from Emmanuel Archo. He's got a lovely podcast that, if I remember correctly, he says, "An uncomfortable conversation with the black man." He's a very inspiring speaker. So he said, "You don't like everyone, so why do you expect everyone to like you?"
Yeah, that is true. Yeah,
because I think we are conditioned to be people pleaser, and it takes a lot of practice to have the confidence to say, like what I said last episode, I don't care, or what you say does not have any bearings on me.
Exactly. And I also sometimes ask myself a question: would you prefer to die happy or accomplished? Because I see on a certain level there's a difference for me. There's difficult in fulfilling all the aims that you set for yourselves.
So what does it have to be either or? Because I think accomplishment means different things for different people. So my purpose is to be of service to others. And so when I'm doing it, I feel both happy and accomplished.
Yeah, but accomplished, in my understanding, is achieving own goals.
So what does goals mean to you in that context?
Well, goals in terms of you want to, I don't know, move to a different house, change the job, make sure that your child graduates uni or whatever, gets a job. There are some things that you can, I don't know, achieve on academic level, on personal level. So you set yourself a goals and you can never really run out of those goals. And ultimately, when you die, you cannot fulfill all of those goals.
So I think having the ability to take the step back when you set, inverted commas, goals is to see whether it's society's conditioning for goals, to say if you are deemed, inverted commas again, successful or accomplished, you need to have a house, you need to have a car, you need to have a family, in terms of the societal norm. But what is actually driving you to do this? I think this is more important. The intention is more important.
The intention, that's very true. But whether it's conscious or subconscious conditioning, by the society or not, I think that is just you set yourself a list of things to do. And if you feel pressured to fulfill it, it doesn't matter how this list is shaped in a way. So that's, for me, if you are at peace with yourself and you know what you're doing and you're doing the hardest, the best you can to fulfill your life purpose, that's where you can find peace and happiness, because you've done maximum of what you could have done. You've listed the best, ability of being good, and this is where you can find your purpose, and this is what ultimately can provide peace and calmness.
Yeah, and I think when you get to that point, the need for goals fall away.
Very true. Yeah. Yes, because quantifying the goals makes it like a tick box exercise for me. Because then, you are, as I say, whether it's conscious, subconscious, it is irrelevant, but you feel like you're chasing the rabbit and you throwing yourself into that hole and then into another hole, and then there's a different rabbit, and there is no fulfillment, there is no satisfaction, there is no ultimate says, oh, I'm done now. Yeah, because when does it come? We always, in most cases, either we lose consciousness or we start suffering from dementia, and you never you can hardly ever say that, right, I've done everything that I wanted in life, because death comes always too early, or lack of capacity, for example. You don't have mental capacity and everything stops because you can't carry on.
Unless the goals are set more for the emotions.
If it's for emotion, if it's personal, to be calm, that's a goal that you can achieve yourself, and no ticking the boxes is going to stand in the way if your emotions are level in a way.
Yeah, because I think when I talk about why intention is more important, the goal, I don't want to say we shouldn't do away with goals completely, but it can help, it can supplement, so it can help us to measure. It provides us with some perspective so we can hold people or system accountable. So with the example of, if people say, right, I want a great high performance team, and if you are moving towards the goal-based exercise, you will then just look at the numbers. How much output are we giving? And then performance review people based on that. However, if you have a very clear purpose and you go, I want my team to feel included, I want my team to be able to grow, and I want to support them with that, and that's your intention, you will get the outcome of what you wanted, and the goals or the results might help you, but that doesn't define you, because you're starting from pure right purpose.
And that's going to give you analog results in a way, rather than digital, spreadsheet and the results,
I think
how
you
they
will
come
have
across.
both.
Well, you will have to some extent, but that's not going to be the main focus. The main focus should be on people and on the progression, and not necessarily on the targets themselves. Of course, you have to achieve certain targets, and it's understandable, but that shouldn't be the aim in itself. That shouldn't be the purpose.
Yeah, and I also want to say sometimes goals or numbers or statistics are helpful. So when we look at how we want to reduce the amount of biases in system, because systems are in place for a long time and it's not been really evaluated, how do we reduce gender bias? How do we reduce racial bias and other marginalized community bias. I think the numbers then gives us some perspective, and we can work on this with clear intention and use the numbers to help supplement our next step alongside other things. So the numbers can't be the only thing that we rely on, but it will then allow us to hold system and people accountable.
I think that the numbers and the goals in that respect, yes, absolutely, because once something is measurable, then you can manage it. And that's how you see the progress. It could be an evidence, a hard evidence, but the change of the variables, like mathematics, digital variables, it doesn't necessarily mean that the team or people progress and that there is fulfillment and there is, even if
I agree.
it's going up, because you can achieve it at all cost and you're not going to work on retention, future proofing of your team and other factors that are not as obvious and clear cut as the results as such. Yeah.
Yes.
So whether you are prepared to invest in the long game and work on the purpose, or whether you focus on the short term, you're fulfilling the goals because your position is only tenable for a year or for two years, for example. And then, you have to prove yourself by then. It is great responsibility of leaders to recognize the purpose and support the team on the journey, whilst having control of the figures. I mean, that's very important.
Yeah, and I think us as clinicians, that will come through as patient safety, data, audits, whatever that we're doing. And that's one thing I always hammer home to my team is when you don't have the practice to give yourself the space to reflect, to improve, it is then harder for you to do that for other people. Because I think the easiest example sometimes I say to my team is, if you are not a confident person at home, for you to be a confident clinician, it's usually more likely you are similar to what you're like at home instead of a directly opposite. So when you look at how to be a better clinician, excluding the clinical side of it, better clinician, better leader, you have to be able to look at yourself and go, how can I be a better person?
That's true. And I also, building on what you're saying about being a confident clinician, I don't think that being well-trained clinician equals being more confident clinician. Because sometimes we feel like if we know more, we're going to be more confident. You will be more confident with your knowledge, but not necessarily as a person. You have to work on this separately.
Yes, and I hear that a lot from the students that I teach and train, where they go, I am not confident, but I will be when I get this qualification or when I pass this exam. And a lot of the time I say to them, you wouldn't. and then they say, but I said that to myself when I moved from the first year to the second year in uni, but when I got to the second year, I'm still the same. And I said, you probably will feel the same unless you put in the effort to reflect and to sit in with it, to listen rather than
understand how you can use it. It's like with birthdays. When you come to your birthday, it doesn't matter whether you are 29 and you turn 30. It's just a day's difference.
Yeah.
That doesn't change anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is the same with, with getting more training. You learn more. Yes, you know more. Your knowledge is greater, but it doesn't make you a different person.
It doesn't make you a better communicator. Doesn't make you more empathetic. I agree. That's a good analogy. Actually, I will use that in the future.
It's a short-term goal. Yeah, you feel that you can fulfill yourself with knowledge, but knowledge is nothing without communication. We talked about it earlier that if you can't really sell it, then yes, you're going to be a clever person. But what difference are you going to make to others? What is the purpose of that knowledge? Is it just because you want to read 789 books and memorize them. That's a very selfish goal.
And probably not needed when we have AI or digital.
Exactly.
Who can do that for us?
We were talking about it with analog and digital skills. I mean, how much knowledge do you need these days versus what do you do with that knowledge? We have access to the knowledge at our fingertips. And so just to wrap it up, what's in all this process for me? For you?
For me, it changed me. I think that's an oversimplified answer, but I feel like I approach everything from a simple thing as walking to speaking to colleagues to speaking to my daughters to breathing. When I'm able to be mindful, I notice that it doesn't have to be time consuming. It doesn't have to take hours and hours. It doesn't have to. Walking from the toilet back, I can slow down my breathing and give myself 30 seconds or even less of some calm time. I can give myself that space to be able to go, okay, where am I? How do I feel? And check in with yourself. Just as important when you're checking on other people. I've heard Brene Brown said this in her interview with Ellen. She said, when we have physical pain, so like if we spill anything hot on our skin, that physical pain is similar to when we have emotional pain. And so we care for our physical pain. We take care of it. We give it time to heal. Whereas emotionally, we just go, oh, not important, or oh, don't have time to look at it.
To acknowledge, step back. Yeah.
And to sweep it under the carpet. We really need to give ourselves time to acknowledge how we feel on a day-to-day basis, let alone if we haven't had the opportunity or the practice to look at all the emotions that's built up throughout your whole life. And so it's a lot of unpacking to do, and it's not quick, but it's so worth it. Would you say? I think I triggered this. I hope I inspired or triggered some start in you. Would you say it's worth the effort, whether it's worth the time?
First of all, it shouldn't be allowed, because you took my analogy. I wanted to tell you about the breathing. Yeah, I think it is actually, you start breathing more consciously. You start to appreciate the air around you. You don't just take it for granted. And I think that when you do a bit of work on yourself and you notice the progress, you start to realize that your emotions, your feelings, your interactions with others, you become more conscious of it. And if it's worth it, yes, of course it's worth it. It is something that will not take you back to before you started.
Yes.
It's irreversible. I think that in order to understand yourself, to start digging, you will only benefit if you do it right, if you allow yourself enough time, if you're surrounded by people who will support you, and if you support them, because it's always mutual. I mean, we are social animals and we need interactions with others. And the better we are at talking to ourselves, the more effectively and efficiently we can communicate with others and be understood better. A lot of worries, concerns, scares is because we cannot explain ourselves. We cannot articulate our fears, our worries, our concerns and feelings.
So I think I agree with you. One part where you talk about the language of emotions is really important. And the second thing is actually you need to have a lot of courage. You need to be very brave to address your fears, because when you're able to, you can then help to inspire the people around you to be brave, and also you can identify those courageous people and help give them a nudge forward. So we talk about resilience a lot in this episode, or we mention it a slightly bit, but in our next episode, we'll delve into a little bit more. I hope you're able to relate to what we're saying. Give yourself plenty of time of reflection. You might want to come back and listen to this again. Allow yourself a bit more reflection. Do it in solidarity. Do it with the people that will support you. Do it together to get some synergistic energy. Whichever way, reflect and give yourself the space. And hopefully the dust will be removed. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. It's been
Yuen
and Mike, and you have been listening to the Imperfect Clinician podcast.
You can follow the Imperfect Clinician on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You will find all the information about our episodes on our website, theimperfectclinician.com, where you can join the discussion by leaving us a voicemail or comment.
If you haven't yet, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast wherever you listen to it. Recommend the podcast to one person that will benefit from it. Join us next week for another conversation. Thank you for listening.